one of the ones I'd like to do is one of your lessons that I heard, I guess it's 2.5 years ago now, on Facebook. He said, which one's that? And I said, how to treat visitors. I remember my mom coming up to me and saying, Austin, you've got to hear this lesson. You've got to hear this lesson. You've got to hear this lesson. I mean, she kept telling me, reminding me every day, hey, you really need to listen to this lesson. Because she said it is what the church needs, and he hits it spot on. And so I eventually went back and listened to it, and it's great. Now, I'm not going to do as near as good a job as Rob did, of course, because Rob's Rob, and he's the expert at this. But I'm going to just kind of go over the points and the application aspect of how do we need to treat visitors. If you want to hear Rob do it, go, I think it's like March 3rd, 2019. It's on Jacksonville's Facebook page, March 3rd, 2019. He goes into more detail. He kind of works some of his seminar stuff into it as well, but I'm just going to kind of give you the bones of, hey, how do we need to treat visitors? How do we need to treat visitors? When you come to worship service, I think the number one thing, and this is, I could get on a soapbox about this for real. I think one thing the church needs to do a better job of is getting to church early. And the reason for that is because you never know when that visitor might walk in. And this is, like I said, I can get on a soapbox about this. How does it look when we have members of the church coming in 5, 10, right before the Lord's Supper, walking into the auditorium, and we have visitors in our mix? That's not a good reflection upon the church. That's just my opinion, and I think it's fact, but But I think that's something that we need to preach on. I think it's something that we need to remind our members on, because let me tell you something. If it comes to a ball game, what are they going to do? They're going to get there 2 hours early. They're going to watch the team warm up. They're going to watch them take batting practice. They're going to be looking for the coach on the sideline, seeing who they're interviewing with. They're going to get there, look at all the different attractions. They're going to do everything they can to do that. Hey, Disney World, what do we do? Hey, we got to get there right when the doors open. We got to see the great celebration. We got to do this thing. We're going to close down the park. We're going to do everything we can to be there as long as we can. But when it comes to the Lord's service, what do? Oh, it's okay. I'll just get there right at 9:30, sneak in the back. I'll get there at 10:30, just slip on in. And we need to get there early. And we need to tell our brethren to get there early, because, number one, like I said, I think it's a poor reflection upon the church. But secondly, I think it's a poor reflection upon our priorities. We'll get there early for a ball game. We'll get there early for, school. We'll be on time for school, but we can't be on time for Bible class. We can't be on time for worship. And so I think, number one, we need to be there early. And I'm going to emphasize that over and over again, probably throughout this lesson. But when you get to worship assembly, when you get to Bible class, you need to be looking. As Rob says, what is your game plan? What are you doing when you come to the worship assembly? You need to be looking for visitors. Yes, you can greet your brethren, yes, but what you need to really do is what? Be looking at who is normally not there. Look for those visitors. Now, I'm going to treat visitors differently based on their categorization. If I see Steve and Kathy walk into Riverbend, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them a big old hug. I'm going to say, hey, but if I see somebody in the back corner that I don't recognize, that potentially might be a non-Christian, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell Steve and Kathy, hey, it's great seeing y'all. I'll catch up with y'all later, but I need to go talk to somebody else. I'm going to treat Christians differently than I am non-Christians. Why? Because, hey, number one, they're there because they want to be there. Them, I'm going to treat differently. If there's one thing you're going to take from this lesson, I think it's this. How important is a first engagement? That first time, that first snapshot you get when you meet somebody. How important is that? You're probably always going to remember it, right? Hey, were they friendly? Were they mean? Were they ugly? Were they not talking? You have one opportunity to impress them. That first impression is so vitally important. I think that's the whole gist of this lesson. How is it that you're going to greet them? How is it that you're going to keep them? And how are you going to make that contact a prospect? Got to cultivate that soul. Acts 2 verse 47, have favor with the people, as Rob kept mentioning. But what? Looking for visitors. Looking for visitors. So I think we first got to establish, hey, There's a difference between somebody traveling through and worshiping with us and those that was worshiping in my community. And there's a way to do that, and I'm going to talk about that just for a second. A lot of people think, you know what? Church is just a benevolence work. It's just here to do good works and help people, which it is. But that benevolence needs to drive us to evangelism. If the church was just simply a building of people that did good works and helped people out, there would be no difference than the Lions Club. There'd be no difference than the Habitat for Humanity. But we are people that help people, not physically, but how? Spiritually. And that's the most important aspect we need to be working towards. So the way we're going to do that is that first impression. That first impression is so vitally important, and that's how we're going to talk about it this evening. Go with me to Romans chapter 16. Romans chapter 16. Here in Romans chapter 16, what's the one verse you know from Romans 16? Verse 16, right? What does it say? Greet one another with a holy kiss. The churches of Christ salute you. What's all of chapter 16 about, though? Greetings. It's about welcoming. Let's look at it. Look at verse number 3. Greet Priscilla and Aquila. Verse number 5, greet my beloved brother. Verse 6, greet Mary. Verse 7, greet. Verse 8, greet. Verse 9, greet. Verse 10, verse 11, verse 12, verse 13, verse 14, verse 15, verse 16. How we greet our brethren and greet those who are in our community that visit with us is so vitally important. Paul thought it was important. He put it in the book of Romans. And we need to do that. How is it that we are going to greet? How is it that we are going to help our visitors? Number one, I think you need to do this. Your church needs to have some kind of way, some kind of system set up that you greet visitors. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But you need to, number one, make sure you somehow collect information on them. And I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let me do this first. There are 4 different reactions you're going to give visitors. 3 of them being negative, 1 of them being positive. The first one is a cold shoulder. You see a visitor walk in, what do you do? See somebody you don't know, you walk away from them. You give them that cold shoulder. Okay? That is not a good impression on the visitor. Because what are you doing? You're ignoring them. They are our guests. And what do we say? What do we say from the pulpit all the time? Hey, if you're visiting here with us, you're our honored guest, but we're not going to talk to you. I mean, think about that. How many times does that happen? Welcome to the Church of Christ. If you're visiting here with us today, stick around a little bit so we can get to know you. No, we don't need them to stick around. They shouldn't stick around. We need to go to them. And that's what we need to be doing when we do that. Don't give them the cold shoulder. You know, we knocked almost 2,500 doors this week. You know, when a visitor walks into our assembly, we didn't have to knock a door. They knocked our door. And we need to give them the attention that they deserve. So don't give them the cold shoulder. We don't need to be busy talking to our brethren. If I go to church with Carrie, I don't need to be talking to Carrie about the ball game and all this stuff when I got a visitor in the back corner. Because I'm giving them the cold shoulder. I need to say, hey, Carrie, I'll call you later this week. We'll talk about the ball game. We'll get together Monday night, whatever. Hey, there's a visitor back here. I'm going to go talk to them. Once they get seated down, I'm going to get them seated. I'm going to talk to them for about 5 minutes. Then you come back and get to them in about 5 minutes. Okay? Don't give them the cold shoulder. Don't ignore your visitors. You have one opportunity, one time to impress. How many? I think everybody in this room likes to travel probably. I mean, you wouldn't if you didn't want to come here. How many times have you been to the Lord's church, you walked in, you sat down, and nobody talked to you? That's a sad situation. That's a sad situation. Second way is a casual nod. I would say that this is probably the most common way we greet visitors. How you doing? Good to have you. How you doing? Yep. Welcome. How many times are people standing out in the lobby and that's all they do? They give them, hey, how are you doing? Thanks for coming today. They just walk by. They just keep going. Yep. How you doing? Casual nod. It's just that nod, that handshake. It's quick. It's kind of that uncomfortableness, because what are you doing? You're like, hey, I checked the box. I talked to a visitor. But was it productive? Did you get their information? Did you find out if they are actually a member of the Lord's church just passing through, or what? Like I said, just like cold shoulder, the casual nod is not good as well. So those are kind of like if you want to look at a scale, these are at the bottom of the list. But then you can also go overboard. And this is, I think, what hurts almost more than the cold shoulder in a lot of ways, because what happens? We run them off. Hey, it's good to see you today. Where are you from? What's your name? Where you work at? Is this your wife? What's her name? Y'all got kids? Huh? How many times does that happen? Or let me say this, and this is, I've seen this done recently, and it made my blood boil. Hey, it's good to see you visiting with us today. Hey, I got this tract here. It's about the one church. We were taking the Lord's Supper every Sunday. Do you do that at your church? I've seen that. Hey, I got these booklets here. I'm going to give them to you. Why don't you fill them out? Is that the way we're going to use back to the Bible? That happened, and I told that brother, I said, don't give anybody those booklets, because I want to teach them those booklets. Well, what good? What harm would it do? They need to be taught through them. Overboard. It's not 20 questions. It's not find out every detail you can about them. It's not bombard them with tracts. And that, I think, like I said, I could get on a soapbox, but I'm not. I'm going to avoid it. I think too many times, brothers in Christ want to go to the tract rack and grab one, about baptism or whatever. They want to lead them straight to the baptistry that day. And I probably didn't do a good example explaining this, but instead of the one about this is another example that I saw or heard about recently, and it says this man greets a visitor. He says, "Hey, it's good to have you visiting with us. Where do you go to church at?" Not a bad question, if he's from the area. Well, I go to such and such Baptist church. He says, "Well, y'all partake of the Lord's Supper every first day of the week like we do here?" You think that visitor's going to come back? I mean, it's making me cringe. I'm not. And I'm going to talk about how to help maybe some of these things. Also, you can go overboard by not letting them sit down, bombarding them before they can get in the auditorium. Because remember, what did Rob say the other day? What's the number one thing a visitor wants to do? Sit down. Sit down. Let them sit down. Let them get comfortable. Okay? Don't go overboard with that. And also, don't gossip. Don't gossip. Well, here at our church, our preacher only works one day a week. Well, hey, here at our church, we got a lot of people that do this, and I don't agree with it. You should never tell a visitor a negative thing about the congregation. What do you think that's going to do? They're never going to darken the doors again. Never darken the doors again. Talk about the church in the positives. All right, so those are the three negatives. Cold shoulder, casual nod, overboard. And I would say I'd be willing to bet those are the ones that's done more often than not. I would probably say overboard is right behind casual nod. But the fourth one is the Christian greeting. And like I said, Romans 16 teaches us we need to greet our brethren, but also an application we need to teach our churches how to greet the visitor. Now, these are the 10 principles, the 10 suggestions that Rob gives for how to treat visitors. All right, so these are the 10 principles that we need to apply when we go home. These are the 10 things we need to be looking at and saying, hey, Check the box here. I do this one. You know what? I really struggle with this one, but I'm going to work on it. When I go over these 10 things, evaluate yourself and see where you are at. This whole workshop is to say, hey, I'm here. I want to get here. How do I get there? We're challenging you. We want you to get better. This is the way you get better. Remember, we did not have to knock one door for that visitor to come in our audience. We want that best first impression. These are 10 principles we can use to do it. Number one, every congregation should be assigned greeters for both members and visitors. Assigned greeters. And this is where it is strategic. Very strategic. I think Brother Kane gave a big amen the other night when Rob said, there's some people you don't want greeting visitors. Amen. There we go. Okay? And I would amen that too. Because why? They're going to go overboard, right? They're going to ask them everything about themselves. They want to dig out everything they can. They might talk negatively about the church. They might be mad at the preacher all the time. Well, he only works one day a week, or, his family does this, or, whatever. Don't let them be a greeter. Okay? They might be bombarding them with information that they're not ready to receive yet. They might try to have a Bible study right there in the pew like I talked about. Does your church take the Lord's Supper every first day of the week? Y'all use instruments of music because the Lord didn't command that. Okay? So use your greeters wisely. Now, this is something we're slowly implementing at Riverbend. We're getting there. Number one, your greeters got to be on time. Okay, you don't want greeters that's walking in the door at 5 minutes before services trying to greet people as they walk in and carrying all the kids. You want people that's early. You want people that's welcoming and that can apply these principles correctly. So identify who your greeters are going to be. Who's going to be at the back, welcoming, opening the doors for them? Who's going to be the ones that's kind of walks them in and gets them to a seat? Who's going to be the one that comes up to them and collects their information? Okay? If you have a visitor, number one, you got to greet them, but number two, you got to collect information on them. Okay? So number one, every congregation must assign greeters for members and visitors. Number two, greeters need to smile, be early, and ready to give and receive information. Number two, and I think this is actually in your Evangelism Simplified workbook. So I'm just taking these principles straight from here. Greeters need to smile, be early, and ready to give and receive information. What kind of information do you think a greeter needs to give? What's the most important thing? Okay? Your name too, right? Hey, my name is Austin. It's good to have you visiting with us, right? Can I tell you where some things are? If they're coming for Bible class at 9:30, you be like, hey, let me show you where your kids' classes are so we can get, and walk them down there. Show off the building. Okay? Show off the building. Show them, hey, we got kids' classes. We got a great fellowship hall. Hey, we got a fellowship meal today. Why don't you stay with us and be with us? Go ahead and invite them right then. Okay? Give information about the building. Give information about yourself. Don't bombard them, but do that. What else do you think they need to give? Greeters need to give. It's in your point. Smile. Smile. Good to have you visiting with us. How welcoming is that? Hey, it's good to have you visiting with us. What's your name? Steve. It's so great to have you today, Steve. Why don't you go on in and get a seat here? Go find you a seat. Yep. Okay. Hey, Steve, it's good to have you with. Be smile. Be energetic. Be happy. Hey, somebody has came to your door. Be excited about it. Number 3, identify yourself by name and make eye contact. Identify yourself by name and make eye contact. I'm going to get on a soapbox for a minute. I teach high school. Pray for me. I go back to work Monday. When I teach at the high school I went to. Kids do not know how to communicate. How do they talk to you, Brother Kevin? Mr. Tackett, I got a question. Right? Yeah, hey, Tackett. You know, they don't know how to communicate, but they don't also know how to make eye contact. That's why they need to bring speech class back. I'm off my soapbox now. But what? Make eye contact with them. Look them in the eyes. Hey, it's good to have you visiting with us. How important is eye contact? It shows that you're giving them your full attention. And it shows, hey, you're important to me. Give them that smile. Give them your name. Number 4. I'm going to label this one, avoid the extremes of asking too many questions and giving out too much information. Don't ask too many questions. Don't give out too much information. Kind of that idea of overboard. That's what you want to avoid. Avoid too many questions and giving out too much information. I think that one kind of explains itself. Point number 5, never, and I've already said this, talk bad about the church. That can become a wrecking ball instead of a building block. Never talk bad about the church. You should, let me just say this in general. You should never talk bad about the church out in public. You want me to tell you why? If you're venting about the church, let's just say you're eating lunch with some coworkers. Well, you know what? I can't believe the preacher. He preached on this Sunday, and or I can't believe this member, they did this, You think they're ever going to visit your church? If you talk negative about it the whole time, you think they ever want to go there? Do you think they'll ever want to be a part of what you are? No. So I would change number 4 or number 5. Never talk bad about the church in general. You never know who's listening, and you never know what it might affect. It will definitely be a wrecking ball instead of a building block. Number 6. This one's good. Be flexible about your parking spot, your pew, your songbook, and your chair. Be flexible about your parking spot, your pew, your songbook, your chair, your whatever. I think too many times, I'm going to say this. What does members of the church do? They get there early, and they go park it in their parking spot in the pew, and they don't get up. They basically give the visitor a cold shoulder. And then what happens? Y'all have seen it before in your lifetime. A lot of y'all in here have lived longer than me. Hey, brother, can you slide over? Can you slide over? This is my pew. Right? How do you think that makes visitors feel? Hey, let me suggest this. And this is something I've thought about for a while. It's something I probably need to do a better job in practice of. But what if we did this as members of the Lord's church? Every Sunday we sat in a different pew. Let me tell you what that would do. It would avoid this idea of this is my pew. Secondly, if you don't have visitors, you at least could talk to your brethren and get to know other brethren, right? If I sat here 1 week, and I sat here 1 week, sat here, sat in the back, I would get to see different people. And if I don't have visitors, I can grow closer to my brethren. Avoid those things. Avoid having your pew. Verse 7. Don't get so wrapped up in visiting with your friends that you forget to identify visitors. Don't get so wrapped up in identifying your friends that you forget visitors. And I'm afraid that's what happens. You congregate out there in the lobby. I'm not saying y'all, I'm talking about, everybody else that's not here this weekend. They congregate out there in the lobby. They congregate, at different sections of the auditorium. Because what happens? They see them on Sunday and they see them on Wednesday. They got to catch up with all the gossip that's going on in between, right? Hey, I got to tell you about what my kid did. I got to tell you about what happened at work. I got to tell you about this. I got to tell you about that. Avoid those things. Oh, hey, I promise you, Steve, I'm going to use you as an example. Let's say I go to East Main. Okay, I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm looking in the back. I'm kind of keeping my eyes open for some visitors. There's some people that walk in. How would you feel if I said, hey, Steve, I'm going to catch up with you later. I'm going to go talk to these visitors. Hey, it's okay to talk to your brethren. You need to talk to your brethren. But what's the priority? What's the most important thing? That visitor. That visitor. Make them feel welcome. Number 8. If a visiting family has children, introduce and show their teacher and show them their classrooms. In parentheses, this point has this. Teachers should always be early and ready for visitors. Teachers shouldn't show up 5 minutes late and be like, hey, I'm ready to teach. Shouldn't be making copies down in the resource room 10 minutes before class has started. The teacher needs to be what? In their room, standing outside of it, sitting inside, playing with the children, ready to work. Number 9, don't rush through your greeting and make visitors feel as if they are an inconvenience. I think there's, and it's just finding that happy medium. I think a lot of these points, you got to find the happy medium. You don't want the cold shoulder, you don't want the casual nod, and you don't want to be overbearing by playing 20 questions. You want that happy medium. And that's just going to take you something to find. Hey, you want to greet them, you want to tell them your name, you want to collect their information if it has not been collected yet, and so on. Don't rush through it though. Don't just go like, hey, good to have you today. Thanks for visiting. My name's Austin. Don't rush through it. Take your time. Do what you need to do to make them feel welcome. And number 10, extend an invitation for lunch or supper so you can get to know them better. How many times was that key in Rob's studies that he told us about? About every time, right? Eat, always eat. Amen to that. All right? Like I said, you got to find that happy medium. Find that happy medium. Don't be overbearing. Brother Tackett texts me this. You never get a second chance to make the first impression. How true is that? How true is that? We get one impression. That's it. You get one first impression. Apply these 10 principles. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 other things that might help you. I think it would be best suited if you had greeters and you had gatherers. And what I mean by that is the greeter, really a gatherer is also a greeter, but the gatherer's job is to do what? Get the contact card filled out. Get the information filled out. You might say, hey, you're going to be visitors, but hey, your 2 jobs this Sunday is you're going to be gatherers. If we have visitors, your job is to gather their information. Your job is to get a card, an attendance card, and go up to them and say, hey, my name's Austin. How are you doing today? Thank you for visiting us. What's your name? What's your name? Steve. Steve, it's good to have you visiting with us today. Do you live here in the Rome area? You just moved here? How long have you moved here for? 2 months. 2 months. Did your job move you here? Great. You enjoying it? If you need any help in the Rome area, please let us know. We're here to help you. We want to make sure that you feel at home, and we're glad that you visited with us today. Let me just ask you one more question. We like to get visitors' information. Can I get your contact information? Okay, you said your first name was Steve. Steve. What's your last name? Arnold. And what's your address? What's your phone number? What's your email address if you do all that? Okay. And then say, thank you for giving us the information. we're going to encourage you if we can help you in any way. Now, let's just say I go up to Steve and I say, Steve, are you from this area? No. Are you traveling through? Yeah, okay. Where are you heading to? You're heading to Memphis. Where you live at? You live in Chesapeake Bay. Where do you go to church at down there in Chesapeake Bay? Chesapeake Bay Church of Christ, right? Okay. All right. And so, hey, what do I know about Steve now? He's a member of the church just passing through. Am I going to spend as much time with him as I would somebody else? No. Prioritize. So this is the next suggestion I'm going to give to you. Get people in your congregation that's going to be good greeters and be good gatherers. But number 2, or I guess it's number 3, find a organized way to keep everything organized. Excel sheets, whatever way that your church finds the most convenient. Keep a log of visitors. Because what happens is what? If Howard comes to church services and he's with us, and then you come back in 2 more weeks, what do I say? Hey, we did a good job, right? And I'm going to follow up with him even more. I'm going to say, hey, we're going to go out to eat tonight. But won't you come back tonight? We'll go eat tonight after services. Okay, hey, then if he comes again, hey, he's going from cold contact to warm contact to what? Hot contact. And he's a good prospect for a Bible study. Okay? So you got to find some kind of way of organization. And I would suggest this. Email it out if you have a church secretary, get her to keep up with it. Get her to type it up in whatever format you want it in. Email it out to all the elders and deacons. Okay? But then the next question becomes, how do you get your congregation involved? How do you get them involved with this? They might be greeters, they might be gatherers, but this is the way. Compassion cards. Compassion cards. I think Rob probably talked about it a lot this week. Now, what we do at Riverbend is, it worked for a while, and I've been gone, so I'm not sure exactly how it went. A lot of our members like writing them at home in peace and quiet. Like we tried meeting after church, dividing it up into 2 groups, 2 sections, and a lot of them was like, I just can't think. There's too much going on. I want to focus. Can I write them during the week and give them to you on Wednesday? That's fine. I told them that's fine. Okay? And one thing I would encourage you, kind of tying these 2 things together, and this is, I got so busy about April and May that I turned it over to the church secretary. Find out how many cards you send each person. Keep track of it. Okay? Keep some kind of record of those things that you're sending out. And let me suggest this. So on your compassion card list, this is the way we did it. On our evangelism table at Riverbend, like I said, this might not be the most effective way, but it seemed to work for us, at least for the while. Like I said, I haven't been there in like 2 months because I've been traveling, going to different places, so I haven't got an update. But what we did at Riverbend is we put out a compassion card list on Sunday afternoon. I typed it up Sunday afternoon, and I put it on our evangelism sheet. And our announcements guy would encourage everybody, hey, as you leave today, grab a compassion card list and make sure you fill those out and bring them back Wednesday. And one Wednesday night we had a stack that large. My uncle came up to me bragging. He said, hey, have you been in Amanda's office yet? I said, no. Why not? He's like, there's just cards that thick. That's great. That's what we want. And what I did, and I can send you examples if you would like this, what we did at Riverbend is I had different headings. I said, okay, here's people that's visitors that's non-Christians. And I had them listed, name, address, maybe a little synopsis about, hey, they were visiting with so-and-so. Kind of that way they know, hey, I met that person, or I didn't meet this person, or hey, I kind of maybe even know them from the community. I would have visitors, that may have been traveling through as a section. I would have our sick members listed. Maybe somebody came up to me and said, hey, Austin, Sister so-and-so, she had surgery and she's been shut in for about a week. Can you add her to the compassion card list? This is a great time to do it. Okay? And I would add her to the list. And then I would put, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I had one last section. And this is where I took requests from members. I had little sheets on our evangelism table where they would write down, hey, Chandler Pereira. Let's just put in, my cousin Chandler's not a Christian. Chandler Pereira, he had gallbladder surgery. He needs cards, okay? And I would take that and I'd say, hey, this is a contact, right? He's having surgery. We're going to load him with cards. And I'd put that on there. And we'd send him cards. One thing, and this is probably something I did not do a good job of, so I'm letting you learn from my mistakes. I think that's the best way to learn. One thing I think that we needed to do a better job of at Riverbend is stressing, this is for non-Christians. The cards that I want you to fill out and saying, hey, I want to bombard this person with cards, it needs to be for non-Christians. I would say over half the percentage of the time our members gave me members of the church, which is fine. We need to encourage our brethren. We're to edify one another, right? But the purpose of compassion cards is what? Those non-members. We want to get that contact. We want to bombard them with cards. That way when, hey, they get to feeling better or they get over their surgery, they'll be like, hey, I'm going to give that church a try. They cared about me. I didn't receive one card from the church that I attend now, but I received 20 from this congregation. I'm going to give them a try. And then when they come in, and they tell you their name's Chandler Pereira, you'll be like, hey, we've been praying for you. Hey, they know my name here. Makes an impression. So I definitely would encourage some kind of organized system, some kind of organized way of getting, identifying your greeters, identifying your gatherers. Once you gather that information, have some kind of organized way to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some things that I'm going to do at Riverbend after AMC. But any questions or comments on how to treat visitors?